Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us. It's an auspicious day because today we have a special guest in the person of, well, before I tell you the person, if I tell you what we're going to be talking about today, you begin to get an indication. We're going to be talking about how we are fixing the education sector in Nigeria. And I guess the person who knows the most about that right now is no other than the Minister of Education, Professor Tahir Mamman, and we'll be joining him in his office live this morning. Okay, a fine morning to you, Professor Tahir Mamman.
Good morning.
Thank you very much.
Having me.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure. We were trying to establish all those things. This is Yori Folani in studio. Delighted to have you as our guest, sir. Okay.
Thank you. My pleasure to hear.
Indeed. Well, as I was telling our viewers, we'll be learning what it is that we are doing to fixing the education sector in Nigeria. And I imagine that it does need fixing in the sense that a 2022 UNESCO report, but you would know best about these things, actually has stated that up to 20 million Nigerians are out of school. If that is indeed the case, then it does need fixing, and we're glad that we have you. The aim is 26% of the budget for education purposes. I don't know if that is possible. So at this stage, I'll just be quiet and listen to informed commentary from you, Honorable Minister. So how are we going about fixing the education sector in Nigeria?
Thank you very much. Good morning, viewers and other audience. Now, the starting point is to appreciate that education is actually the nerve of any country. It is the main vein through which that country survives. So if we have a good education system, and we have good graduates coming from out of the schools, then that will assure the progress and development of that country. And if we don't, then that's a very serious problem. And that's why developed countries, America, UK, Canada, they invest so much in importing brilliant, talented people into their countries because they know the importance and centrality of education. For us, particularly as a developing country, it cannot be anything less. In fact, we need more of appropriate education system that will assure quality at all the levels, that will assure relevance at all the levels, and then that will assure research and innovation, and that will assure, harmony between our environment and learning. So these are some of the major things that we have to grapple with. We all know as a fact that after independence, we had a very good education system. The regions were not many at that time, just about 3, but we had a very good education system at that time. It wasn't large, but it was acknowledged to be very good. But over time, the system, of course, grew rapidly because of demands of the population. And so as it grew, I think we have not been able to manage that growth very well, even though it's very important for people to have access to education because, as the President has constantly said, it is very empowering. It's the most important tool that assures power and capability to people for people to be able to have meaningful livelihood. But somehow, I don't think we're able to manage that process very well. We allowed it to grow very unwieldy and without control over the quality of the education. So when we came into the system as the minister, and graciously appointed by the president to manage this sector, the first thing we did was to try to understand what was on the ground, and we took our time to do that. And then we now developed a roadmap that would guide our journey in the sector, bearing in mind its importance. And then the presidency as well also developed a set of deliverables, of course, for every ministry, for every minister, and including the education sector. And so that's what we are delivering. And for us, we've come to understand that the starting point is for us to focus mainly on the foundational aspect of education. We have 3 levels in the education system: the primary up to the basic education system, the secondary school, and then the tertiary, which comprises polytechnics, the universities, and colleges of education. And now, from my own experience, you know, having been at the tertiary level for over 30 years, yeah, there's some level of control and direction at that level, even though we still have a lot to do there. But we have what is called a learning crisis at the foundation level, at the primary and secondary school levels. Those levels need a lot of attention. And those who proceed to tertiary level are not more than 20%. So we have the 80% of the population of students in Nigeria, you know, at that level. And now, if they don't proceed, you ask yourself the question, what happens to that 80%? Where are they? Where are they? Are they meaningful members of the society, or are they just all over the place wandering, you know, without education, without training, or without skills? That's a fundamental question to ask always. And so that's why, for us, it's very important for us to go back to the basics and then take a further bearing, take a look at that, what we need to do at that level. And so what we have done here, what we have done is to say, look, there is a trajectory which is set out actually in the Education Minimum Standards Act of 1985, which is supposed to guide the development, progressive development of every child as he enters school from at the pre-tertiary, pre-primary level, right into primary, basic education, and then secondary school, and then the tertiary level. Well, unfortunately, that trajectory has not been followed. So what we are trying to do now is to see that we start from that foundation level. Of course, not everything can be done at that level. Yes, please.
Minister, could I come in there, please? You said that when you arrived, necessarily you had to evaluate what you met, what the lie of the ground. And from some of the things you have also said, maybe I just wanted to be clear about it. Has it been your personal finding as an expert in the field of education that the quality of education in Nigeria has fallen? Because scholarship, we used to be proud of our scholarship. Even till date, there are, you know, instances where Nigerian scholars excel, but at the foundational level that you were mentioning just now, this figure, very worrying figure, this UNESCO report figure of 20 million Nigerian kids that need to be in school, not being in school, is that something of a crisis?
It is something definitely to worry about. Now, talking about figures, officially what we have is about 10.2, 10.5 million people who are now out of school. UNESCO, World Bank talks about 20 million. So there are all these things about figures and percentages flying all over the place. We are also, that's one of the other things that we are going to address, the issue of data on the education system. Is one of the things we have set out to address. Right now, we have set out our policy to do a census of all schools in Nigeria, both private and in the public sector. And we also want to generate data on all teachers in Nigeria to know not just the number, but their background, their teaching support, the development support, training support they are getting, and then all the learners. We are also going to generate data on all the learners in this country, from primary school right through all other levels. And it's only when you have that information, people know exactly how many you have out of school. How many girls are out of school? How many boys are out of school? Where are they across the country? Which zones and states, are worst affected? And then when you come to schools, when you have data on your schools, you're able to know the sufficiency of the schools, the conditions of the schools, the learning facilities in the schools, and then their proximity to each other. And then whether once a child finishes from basic secondary school, JSS 3, there is sufficient secondary school for them to proceed to their SS. So you need that information to be able to intervene when you want to intervene. And then the teachers, as I have said again, you need to know the number of teachers you have, their profiles, whether they are actually qualified to teach as teachers, and if they are not if they are qualified, what continued professional development they are supposed to have, including, of course, their welfare and that sort of thing. Because education and society is very dynamic, so they need to be supported, they need to be motivated. So we are reviewing the existing policy on teacher development to ensure that it is suitable, it is for the purposes of providing necessary education in the country. And the teachers also need to be supported with digitization skills so that they can bring technology in their teaching. This is the current situation in the whole world. And then even because of the size of Nigeria, technology is very important to deliver in education. So we have a whole raft of policies that are coming up to support teachers' development and training. And that's why right now we have established smart schools in every state of the Federation, so that to aid the technical skills of teachers to deliver through the use of technology in the classroom. And we're going to expand further from states to senatorial zones, and probably down the road even to local governments, this type of schools. But we are also supporting them even from here through the ICT Directorate of the Ministry to give them that training in the use of technology in the classrooms. So these are some of the things we are doing in terms of the teacher development, and as part of, but we need the data. We need the data. That's what we have to have.
And that is a work in progress right now. That is a work in progress now.
Oh, yes, it is. It's one of the pillars, the 4 pillars. Right now, the ministry has developed 4 encompassing pillars, and data generation is one of them. And as I said, on all these parameters or these indices that I have just mentioned, on schools, and these schools include both public and private. We need to know
all right.
These schools, their conditions, what they have, their facilities. And because if you look at a lot of governors and governments, they concentrate on schools within the state capitals. But looking further afield in the rural areas, you'll find the schools are in a very terrible condition. They are not, they don't have the learning facilities. They are far from each other. So by the time we have that information.
I beg your pardon, Minister. That immediately brings us to the issue of funding. What is your impression of the allocation from our budget to education? Because all these things, you said you're establishing assets in every state of the country, bar none. Of course, the objective is, you know, the ideal case scenario would be 26% of the national budget. I'm sure you don't have that. We, when I say you, we as Nigerians, we might not have that. Or do we? And how is this paucity of funds relative to the size of the task that you have? How is it impacting it?
Well, certainly we can do with a lot more money. The president has increased the budgetary allocation to the ministry, and then we have other intervention agencies like UBEC, like TED Fund, which are supporting us. But the size of the problem is such that, honestly, even if we have half of the budget of Nigeria, we can still do with more. But the most important thing about money is not the quantum of the money. It is the deployment, how it is utilized. You can have 1 trillion if it is not utilized, if there's no proper plan for its usage and it is not efficiently utilized, then you will get the result of probably for 1 million or 2 million. For us, and from my own personal experience, I have planned, I like to get so much with very little. And what I have, I try to maximize its benefits. You channel it into the properly, and then you will have a good result. So that's what we are doing in the ministry. And it's not so much about the money, which is as important as it is, but it's about having the right ideas and channeling your resources towards that. And that's why the issue of data is so terribly important. Yes.
On that point, Honorable Minister, this whole matter about the right idea and, so to speak, putting round pegs in round holes in the education sector, it is known that the educational terrain is not uniform across the country. Perhaps it is different, the needs, requirements, investments, and infrastructure and all of that in the southern part of the country will be different from the northern part of the country, for example. Could you comment on this and how, especially in the northern part of the country, with a more or less a different educational setup and system, what the difference will be as you proceed? Because you did say that every state, bar none, is being touched by this initiative.
Certainly, there are variations across the country in the facilities available, and even in the attendance of schools, commitment to school, attendance of schools, enrollment, and all that. There are variations. But at the moment, what we're doing is a guesswork. It's a guesswork. You hear, for instance, that in the southeast, the problem is boys not going to school. In the north, it is girls not going to school. And then, so that's why the issue of the data is so terribly important. Right now, we are intervening together with the development partners here and there on various aspects of what is seen to be weaknesses in the system in the various zones. But of course, some of the problems are very uniform. In terms of the quality of learning at the basic education level, the problems are uniform. So what we are doing at the moment is that we are intervening on all those issues right across. But specific interventions will come up when we have the necessary data. We'll be better informed when we have the necessary data which we are working on. But right now, if I may probably mention the other program that we are bringing on board, which is bringing skills, taking skills to the schools, right from the primary school, right through secondary school, and of course the tertiary education level. Now, skills come with a lot of things because we have realized that that is actually the issue right across the world now, that simply allow people to graduate with basic knowledge is not enough, because not everybody goes on to graduate at the tertiary level So when students, learners have some skills at the secondary school level that they finish school with, they can have a meaningful livelihood, at the end of their career, either at the basic education or secondary school level. And that was what the system was in the 60s and 70s when we had comprehensive schools. You will have in that school a section on commerce. You will have in that school a section on carpentry, and all sorts of things, in addition to the general comprehensive knowledge. So when students leave school, you find they have exposure to some form of skills. And so that's part of what we want to bring back now to our school system. And as you know, there are varieties of skills now.
Sorry, Minister. Can I take it then that you are working on establishing more vocational and technical schools in addition?
Certainly, certainly. Right now we have, in all the states, we have actually established vocational schools. There are also technical and science and technical schools which are supposed to generate students with that particular background. But beyond that, even the conventional schools, we want to have skills in them, embedded in their programs, right from the beginning of their studies in primary schools, right through their secondary schools. Those technical schools are different. That's what they are set up to do. But even in the normal conventional schools, we want to bring in skills into the system. And when you have skills, it makes learning interactive at that stage. It's not just the teacher going to the school, sitting there and telling them what to do. No, it becomes very involved, very interactive, because they will now learn a lot of things which they can now go out to practice, which, and of recent, I will have seen the effectiveness of this approach, because there's a program which we are running with the World Bank, the Agile program. It's a program for the development of, specifically for girls, but it's also benefits boys who are in those schools. Where skills are a component of the training they receive from that school. And we've seen them making shoes, making bags, and all sorts of things. And we've seen enrollment increase in such schools because the students and their parents become very interested and excited about their children being able to come home with certain things that they have done physically in school, and which can actually be commercialized, from which the family can make some money. And so we want that, as part of the skills, part of the training and school system in every school in the country. And so we have already put in place, developed a national skills policy. Right now, what we are doing now is to populate. We have a committee working with some agencies to populate that framework with the various skill sets that are necessary for each level of education, from primary basic education to secondary school, so that by the time we are done with it, every school in Nigeria, be it public or private, will now have to go through that system, so that in this way our children will have been prepared to be able to stand on their own, even when they don't proceed to higher education for their studies.
Okay.
And then, of course, we have the